That's not good. Hey gamers, this is part 2 of my guide on pairing and unlocking counterattacks in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. While this video has no direct story spoilers, I do show story characters in combat. In the first video, I discussed both audio and visual tells, as well as developing patterns to help structure your parries. I also recommended trying to identify tells that you can react to, rather than trying to predict when a particular attack will connect. Now in this video, I'll group different attacks into categories and point out which methods, audio, visual, or patterns, I ended up using, and I'll present these in difficulty order, starting with some of the easy attacks to parry, and then later some of the attack types that I continue to struggle with. And then I'm going to wrap up with some quick tips while learning to parry. For me, the easiest types of attacks that I've identified in game are what I'll call step counts. These are attacks that build up and have a regular interval, so they're actually setting the cadence for your parry. With these attacks, the audio and visual tells are happening simultaneously, so you can use either. For me, I'm setting the cadence based on the audio, and then I'm establishing when the last hit will come based on the visual. Very similar are countdown attacks. The key difference here is that the final attack is not at the same cadence. However, the countdown is still preparing a properly timed parry.
On me.
The next category are what I'll call explosions. Again, the audio and visual elements are well synchronized. We can see here that even when the cadence is irregular, the individual explosions are distinct, and there's enough wind-up on each to get ready for that parry.
You can't betray Verso like this.
I tend to use the visual more because in some cases the audio is quiet, like with the Renoir fight. Sometimes the audio is building, like with the Petanques. I find the visual element is always consistent. I look at the status of that collapsing distortion cloud. I can't really identify why, but I find that fast attacks that have some wind-up time are generally easy to parry as well. I think this is because the wind-up portion can trigger audio or visual tells that you're more familiar with. In some of the examples I'm showing, you can see there's explosion-type tells, or others have that audio ting. The largest category of attack types is of course the melee attacks and especially combos. I find that the audio ting that I described in the first video is a really reliable way to determine when to parry. It does take practice, but once you start hearing that ting, it becomes easier to react to on reflex. I'm going to be quiet now for a little bit and turn the volume up. See if you can hear the individual weapon tings on each of the following clips.
On me.
Mael.
Some of these combo sequences are really long, so it can take a lot of mental endurance to stay focused. I've named the next category Flash Reactions. These are fast attacks where parry timing is signaled by a flash. The only tricky part here is that you must wait to react to the flash. Trying to anticipate the flash can cause you to parry early and fail. For me, the tell is 100% visual. Personally, I hyper-focus on the visual element that I'm looking for. Here are some other visual cues you can find watching a particular detail on the mob, such as the claws glowing right when you need to parry, or on this bouncing Nevron. Don't look for the moment when it starts to move downward. Instead, you want to wait until the drop speed noticeably increases. That's when you parry. Dropping a like, commenting, and especially subscribing really helps this channel grow. You can also follow me on Twitch if you're interested in live gameplay. Thank you so much.
Good stuff.
One of the audio cues used a lot in the game is what I'll call an audio drop. The exact parry timing within the audio can feel a little less concrete, so it does take some practice. I believe the audio does peak and break, but you need to get used to the audio pattern. For me, it's one of those audio cues that almost feels intuitive. I love how this effect is blended into many different kinds of attacks. Next are the slow attacks, and generally they're not difficult to understand what's going on, but they can really kind of mess with you. The biggest issue is they feel so different from the normal pace of combat animations. While those large stalls in the animation do build a lot of tension, the attack actually is normally coupled with an audio tell that will trigger when you should parry. The trick is normally just resisting that tension and waiting for the audio cue. The last couple clips are actually examples where I'm looking for a visual cue instead, such as watching the hammer move on this mid-air stall. It's kind of like a 300 style slow motion jump, or on this overhand ground pound, just waiting for the hands to move. For lack of a better description, I'll just call the next attack type a moving line. They can be tricky because I don't feel they're paired with an audio tell at the moment when you need to parry. For me, I try to focus on where the movement of that line is relative to the character and set a mental marker for when to parry. The first advanced category I'll cover is what I call barrages. They have longer duration and significant intensity. For some of the barrages, because of the speed, it's very difficult to react to the individual attacks. So for these, I oftentimes will try to develop a mental pattern for the attacks. This helps me game plan my parries. And there's been a number of times that I get that feeling of just total confusion during a new encounter when the attacks are just raining down on me. I think all of the attacks when fighting Alicia fall into this category. As you retry these combos many times, you may identify a pattern such as 1, 2, pause, 3, 4, long pause, and finally 5. Even though these can be intimidating, focusing attempts specifically on identifying a pattern help me get a handle on these attacks.
Let's dance.
On these fast movers with fast wind-up, the main struggle for me really was just readiness, especially for that first projectile, because the first attack just comes out very quickly. This next category is one that's been personally frustrating for me: simple lobs. I'm talking about catapults and lobbed projectiles. Even though many of them have decent audio-visual tells, I think my brain just panics on these. I fall into that trap of trying to predict when it will hit me rather than reacting to something. A good example of reacting is on this petanque ranged attack. I parry when the cannonball just passes to the top of the arc, and you can see the projectile is picking up speed. The final category have a mixed cadence, and these are going to test your patience, reactions, and pattern detection. These can incorporate small barrages, stalls, fake-outs, and extra flourishes. The designs are great at fooling you into failure. Look at Renoir. He takes a break here to dance around while you're sweating out when his next attack is going to occur. This attacks at a distance combo really got me for a long time.
It's locked on you.
And then on this mob with his fire sword attack, he has this extra horrible sword flourish that got me just a ton of times. Again, these attacks do incorporate audio-visual cues, you just need to filter out all the extra noise built into the combos. I quickly wanted to highlight a small thing that I've been fooled by a number of times: when the mob advances before attacking. You know, combat is tense and it's easy to get jumpy and parry a simple advance thinking it's a jump attack. The mobs may also have a jump attack. I'm going to close out with a few random tips that help me learn to parry in the game. So first of all, perfect dodge is the same as a parry. So if you're dodging and you get a perfect dodge, that is the same timing. I personally recommend you just parry instead so you learn the timing and you develop the muscle memory for your parry at the same time. I didn't use dodge and I really just wanted to learn how to parry. When you're getting absolutely destroyed by a new kind of mob, don't do first strike. You can practice those attacks faster if you don't waste time with your turn first. Res your team members. Your turn is actually better used to res a character and then allow you to stay in the fight longer so that you can see more of those attacks. You're not actually trying to kill the enemy, you're trying to get as many reps of the attack in as possible before you need to reset. The reserve team. When your main team dies, bring in your reserve team so that you can see more attacks. The mob gets first attack, so this is just more practice for you. And to round things out, gradient parries generally seem easier with more leeway to parry early in the attack animation, though I have found a couple gradient attacks where you can parry too early, and it seems to have a tighter parry window. And just a tip, jump dodging, you don't need to wait for your character to land to jump again. Just time your jumps when the attacks happen, and then your characters will react appropriately. I was waiting for the characters to land before jumping again, but on a successive series of jumps, this can mess you up. When you press jump, the dodge animation automatically grounds your character and starts the jump again. And I guess that wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching.